Beloved community, it is so good to be with you, those of you who are both near and far. We continue to be grateful for community and the ways that we get to celebrate God's presence among us, particularly on this third Sunday after Epiphany. So come and see, as Pastor Brittany told us last week, as we continue to explore God's presence among us. This week, in our third Sunday after Epiphany, we are going to take a look at the Gospel of Mark. Mark chapter 1, and we're going to begin with verse 14. After John was arrested, Jesus came into Galilee announcing God's good news, saying, "Now is the time. Here comes God's kingdom. Change your hearts and your lives and trust this good news." As Jesus passed along the Galilee Sea, he saw two brothers, Simon and Andrew. They were throwing their fishing nets into the sea, for they were fishermen. "Come, follow me," he said, "and I'll show you how to fish for people." Right away, they left their nets and followed him. After going a little farther, he saw James and John, Zebedee's sons, in their boat repairing the fishing nets. At that very moment, he called to them. They followed him, leaving their father Zebedee in the boat with the hired workers. These are God's words for God's people. Thanks be to God. So this particular passage strikes me on the heels, as we see in the Gospel of Mark, on John's arrest. Right? And we don't really hear anything up to this point outside of Jesus' baptism. We don't hear an account of John's arrest or any of the context behind it. But we know that John has been arrested. And Jesus comes into Galilee, where he is spending a lot of his time doing ministry and work. And he says, now is the time, right? So for me, these two things following so closely on the heels of one another, that Jesus saying, now's the time, come and see that this is the time to bear witness to this good news. This is the time to change your hearts and lives, comes on the heels of a prophet, of one who has just baptized Jesus, as we see in Mark's gospel, that Jesus is making this imperative for folks. That this man who's been arrested is an impetus for us to bear witness to something has to change. We can't be living the same lives that we have been up to this point. We're foolishly living. We're living in such a way that we're not acknowledging the value of one another. We're not valuing, we're acknowledging God's word, God's presence among us, right? We know that John has been arrested for being a prophet, for bearing witness and truth and life to things that need to be revealed, to injustice that is happening. So we are in a time that change has to happen. That we need to say that there are injustices in the world. We need to call truth to them, to call them to light, to bear witness to troubling times. But we can't just bear witness. We can't just acknowledge that things aren't okay. Jesus says now is the time to change your hearts and lives. Now is the time to act. It's not enough to just say, or it's not enough to say, I believe in all of these great, wonderful things, but I'm still going to continue to live the life that I've lived up to this point. Jesus says, now is the time. God's kingdom is coming. I am here. I'm present with you. He doesn't say this in the text, but I love that Jesus is emphatic with this, that here comes God's kingdom. Change your hearts and lives and trust that this is good news. That God's kingdom is coming is good news, right? And God doesn't just implore us to change our hearts and lives because we're supposed to check off boxes and we're supposed to follow all of God's rules because God is some divine supreme ruler who needs us to be obedient, right? Jesus is imploring them to change their hearts and lives because God's kingdom is coming, because that bears witness to the well-being, not just of myself, but to the well-being and the wellness and goodness and fullness of life for everyone, right? That we are to see and to know that something has to change, right? Right? So as we think about God's coming kingdom, that it requires some action on my part. It requires that I have some work to do as well. That I'm a part of this process. That I need to change my heart and my life. That I can't expect somebody else to do it for me. That I am an agent in this work as well. Right? And as we see in the calling of these first 4 disciples, that there's a trust that comes in this relationship. There's a sense of giving up and being countercultural, right? That in Zebedee's sons, that in James and John leaving their father in the boat with the hired workers, that is countercultural to everything we know of in this context. That sons leaving can oftentimes crumble the family structure. It's countercultural. So the work that we are called to do, and as a part of God's coming kingdom, is oftentimes going to feel very counter to everything we've heard and we've known before. But friends, the work and the time is now to do the countercultural, to do the work that feels challenging and difficult because it's needed, right? We have been called to be participants in God's coming kingdom, to change hearts and lives, to not do the things that we've been doing in the past because, quite frankly, those have not worked. We're still fighting racism. We're still fighting oppression and marginalization. There are folks that still can't be who they are and who they feel they've been created to be because they're still being oppressed. The work we've done up to this point cannot be enough. We cannot rest until the work of full justice has come to be. So, beloved community, I continue to read these words that Jesus says announcing to Galilee, now is the time. Now is the time. Beloved, let us change our hearts and our lives because the good news is here. God is present among us. Let's do the work that God has called us to do, to be the people that God has called us to be.